The largest mass funeral in Gaza's history is underway. More than 100 members of two extended families, all killed in one Israeli strike in 2023. Their remains are finally being laid to rest, offering those who are still alive a semblance of closure. The funeral's being held among the ruins of the Al-Sabra neighbourhood that's been all but flattened during Israel's genocidal war. That's where the two families lived before the strike. Health officials in Gaza say at least 10,000 people are still buried under the rubble after more than 2 years of Israeli strikes. A lack of heavy equipment and fuel has slowed the process of retrieving their remains. And the task is enormous. Since October 2023, more than 80% of buildings in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. That means the war has left behind an estimated 68 million tonne of rubble across the Strip. According to UN estimates, only about 310,000 tonnes have been cleared so far. That's less than 0.5% of the total. We're joined now by Tareq Azzoum, our correspondent in Deir, al-Balah. Tareq, the families today mourning those lost in these attacks. Tell us what you know of the circumstances that meant they are only now burying their loved ones.
Well, the funeral we're witnessing today in Gaza City lays bare a very devastating tragedy of people who are still trapped under the debris of their destroyed residential neighborhoods. In the coming hours, as we got confirmation from Gaza Civil Defense and Ministry of Health, Palestinians will lay to rest the remains of 112 Palestinians from Abu Sharia and Al-Hassaina family. Both of them are extended families living in Al-Sabra neighborhood in the southern part of Gaza City. Both families have lived under repeated Israeli attacks, and as far as we know, they were among 308 Palestinians who have been killed that day in Gaza City, including 40 children, 30 women and 7 people with disabilities. We have heard from Gaza Civil Defense teams that they were unable to take them out from beneath the rubble due to the lack of fuel and the significant shortages of essential equipment. But the question here remains on how people managed to retrieve the remains of their bodies. We saw how civil defense teams and the local community banded together using very primitive rescue tools in order to find any remains, in order to give them a dignified burial. And this funeral shows us how devastatingly is the human cost of this genocide, as there are still thousands of people trapped under the wreckage of their destroyed buildings, specifically in areas that have been seen as an active war zone. I'm talking here about the eastern part of Gaza City. We have got lots of information from families who are living in Gaza City that they have got relatives who are still under the rubble of their destroyed houses. They were unable to retrieve them. And one of the bleakest testimonies that we have heard from civil defense members, that they continue to hear voices of people who were trapped under the rubble for days, but later these voices have vanished, as those people today are expected to lay to rest, as the Israeli military genocidal war is still on the process and also still taking shape in Gaza without any sense of respite, which raises forward further doubts about whether there will be more families that will be trapped under the debris if Israel continues its deadliest aerial campaign across Gaza, even under the umbrella of the ceasefire agreement.
Yeah, as you say, Tareq, a toll in the thousands, tens of thousands, and meanwhile those strikes by Israel do continue. What has been the damage and the cost of these latest attacks?
Well, we can see that Israel's military tactic has been pretty much obvious since the ceasefire was signed in October last year. The Israeli military accepted the ceasefire plan, but on the ground they have shifted their tactics as they rely heavily on using air forces to knock out residential buildings and also to target Palestinians under the pretext of security necessities. That's what we have heard from the Israeli military. But over the past 3 or 2 days, we saw an intensification of Israel's aerial attacks on cars, on people living in makeshift shelters, and also on residential houses. Yesterday, for example, a civilian vehicle was hit at Al-Rashid Road in Gaza City, and this strike claimed the lives of 2 Palestinians who Israel described to be operatives affiliated to armed factions. But also yesterday we saw that 19 Palestinians have been killed. We saw how children were completely ripped off due to these airstrikes, as Gaza's health ministry continues to raise the alarm over the critical level of injuries that continue to arrive to Gaza's hospitals, who are in desperate need for urgent medical care. And people on the ground are still really feel some significant sense of skepticism about their safety, saying that the current ceasefire did not afford them protection, and also despite the current shuttle diplomatic efforts and negotiations taking shape to move to phase 2 of the ceasefire agreement, Israel is still signaling different signs that they will continue to raise and scale up their attacks until Hamas completely lays down its weapons and Gaza become an area which is completely cleared from any sort of military structures.
Tareq Azzoum joining us from Deir al-Balah. Thank you.